Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, I want to talk about how much better and in what areas are the Maple Leafs going to be better next season compared to last year. So this is how a lineup with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen would probably look like next season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. If you're interested in watching just a video about the roster and seeing why some players are here over others, I will link that above the screen because I've already done that. But let's talk about the bottom 6 first, because I do want to spend the majority of this video talking about the decor and the individuals that it will consist of this upcoming season. So if we're looking at the 6 players who made up the Maple Leafs' bottom 6 for the majority of last season, I want you to note the cap hit here. And because the Maple Leafs maybe are going with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen, I included Pierre Engvall in the next group because I do think that he is going to have a big impact on this roster this upcoming year. So like I said, make note of the cap hit here, because if we're looking at what the Maple Leafs' bottom 6 was last season and what it's projected to maybe be this upcoming season, cap hit is much different there. And if you're looking at last year compared to the projected one here, they did trade off a little bit of offense at 5-on-5 in favor of some defense at 5-on-5 there. And the expected goals above replacement, remember, that's not a projection. That is just showing what did happen or what could have happened in the scenarios that these players were put in. But there are some question marks here. Is Joe Thornton going to be better, worse, or the same as he was last season compared to this year being a year older? Is all that extra time off going to give his body a chance to heal? Does he come back the same, better, or worse? I don't know. Let me know down in the comment section what you think there. Can Pierre Engvall find a little bit more of the same scoring touch that he had when he was first called up from the American Hockey League last season, compared to the back half of those 48 games where it was just absolutely miserable offensively for him? He is a very excellent penalty killer and a very good defensive player for them. Does Jason Spezza regress, or is he about the same as he was last year? Is it the same sort of situation as Joe Thornton? I mean, Jimmy Vesey's not a bad depth option. I don't really have too many expectations for him. Alex Kerfoot had an absolute travesty of a 1920 season, first breaking his jaw, then getting concussed, then being suspended, going through 2 different coaches. It was just an absolute mess of a season for him, but he looked phenomenal in the play-in round against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Wayne Simmonds has had a laundry list of injuries for the better part of a half decade now. Does having all of this time off give him a chance to rejuvenate and be better than what he was last season in Buffalo and New Jersey? And the Maple Leafs' bottom 6 produced at this rate, with horrible seasons from Andreas Johnsson, Kasperi Kapanen, and an unfortunate year from Alex Kerfoot. And I'm not saying that the personnel that the Maple Leafs have in the mix to be in their bottom 6 for this upcoming season is better than what they had last season. I think that Andreas Johnsson and Kasperi Kapanen will have bounce back seasons. I'm just saying that last year, the bottom 6, individually, they were bad. The thing that you really do have to make note of is the cumulative cap hit there between all of the players. I think you're getting more overall value here. And I'm not going to use the words better or worse or even the same when comparing the Maple Leafs' projected forward core this year to what it was last year. They made some obvious compromises for some intangibles that were much needed, and they also looked to get some more value out of it, and I think they accomplished both of those things. And like I said before, I think that a lot of fans will appreciate sacrificing some offense for some more defense, toughness, and some leadership in the bottom 6. Now, there's a lot to unpack with what the Maple Leafs' defense was last year and what it will be this upcoming year. There's a lot of asterisks here, Cody Ceci, Tyson Barrie, and Morgan Rielly being 3 of them. Morgan Rielly admitted to playing hurt for the majority of those 47 games, and he was also paired with Cody Ceci. There was the coaching change. The team struggled as a whole. I don't necessarily think that it's too fair to look at Morgan Rielly's 1920 season and view it as anything telling. And I'm also not going to put too much stock into his 18-19 season either, but you also have to consider that he led all defensemen in terms of even strength points that year. Can we just compromise and, for the imaginative purposes of this video, say that Morgan Rielly is closer to what he was in the 17-18 season than what he was in either of the past 2? So when you're keeping that in mind, the Maple Leafs' D-core could have been better last season if Morgan Rielly was healthier and played up to the defenseman that we all know him to be. Now, these are just stats from the 1920 season, but when we're looking at the Maple Leafs' D-core and what it was last year compared to the personnel that's on it right now, it's easy to see why there's a lot of optimism there. They're better offensively, they're better defensively, and it's not too much of a difference in terms of the cap hit. And I know I might have mentioned this earlier, expected goals above replacement is not a projection stat. It's not saying what will happen, it's just saying what did happen. So maybe totaling it all up like this and using it and putting it into the context as a forecast for this upcoming year, maybe that's not the best thing to do. But to that, I would say even if there was a perfect stat to use for projections for this upcoming year, it's still going to be flawed. It's a projection. That's why we actually play the games. This is just how I'm choosing to visualize it, especially when the difference in the numbers here are large. It's not just a small difference. It's a pretty considerable one. So for the purpose of the conversation and the video here, let's just assume that all the players except for Morgan Rielly repeat their results, because I don't think that it's realistic to expect Morgan Rielly to have that poor of a season again. But in which specific areas are the Maple Leafs going to be better in terms of their defensive core? Well, in order to determine that, we need to look at the individual personnel and the players that they brought in to replace players who left. And I know a lot of people don't like these, but when you use actual words to accompany the chart, it's very helpful. If we're looking at Cody Ceci here in terms of entering the offensive zone, in terms of exiting his own zone, and in terms of stopping the other team from getting into his own zone, not particularly good. But when we're looking at TJ Brodie here, he is very effective at gaining the offensive blue line. He is very effective, or quite effective, at exiting his own zone, and he can also stop the other team from gaining his own blue line. And these are numbers over the last 3 years, and it's not exactly a small sample. And if you're looking at the roles that these players played by minutes in these seasons, Cody Ceci, by the minutes, was always a top 4 or top 2 defenseman. He was a top 2 defenseman this year in Toronto by the minutes. And if you're looking at TJ Brodie, again, he was always a top 4 or a top 2 defenseman in terms of the minutes. So these results that TJ Brodie produced are not against weak competition. But Cody Ceci leaving also does present a problem for the Maple Leafs' penalty kill, because even in less games than Justin Holl, he still killed way more penalties than him. And yes, Ceci logged a lot of minutes on the Maple Leafs' penalty kill, but if you're looking at his penalty killing stats from last season, not necessarily the best in terms of the scoring opportunities that the other team had and the volume of shots that they were allowed to get either. And while TJ Brodie did log a considerable amount of minutes on the penalty kill for the Calgary Flames last season, and while he was decent at it, I think this is the reason why the Maple Leafs added Zach Bogosian. Not only is he a tough SOB and will stand up for his team, but he's also a really good penalty killer. And what I'm about to say is okay. He's a really good penalty killer. That's a compliment to him. He's not the most effective 5-on-5, and that's why the Maple Leafs are more than likely going to be using 11 forwards and 7 defensemen, because they're trying to maximize the strengths of their players here, and Travis Dermott is much, much, much more effective 5-on-5 than Zach Bogosian is. And like I said earlier in the video when I was talking about the forwards, they were forced to go with a more value approach, so there's not as much depth or as much talent in the bottom 6 there. Why wouldn't you want to throw an extra defenseman in there if one of the defensemen that you can throw in there is very good at something that's very, very important? And that's also why I think Pierre Engvall is going to be an important piece for this team next year, because while he might not play a lot to start the season due to cap and roster constraints, he's a very, very excellent penalty killer in terms of the opportunities and quality of scoring chances that the other team was afforded when he was on the ice on the Maple Leafs' penalty kill. He's awesome at it. So when you look at the additions and the subtractions that the Maple Leafs made this season, because you can get better by subtraction, no matter how hurtful that is to say about some players, by the numbers and as individuals, this team should be better defensively, and it should be tougher to play against. It's just a matter of if they can gel together and put it together on the actual ice. And that's a big if. And I'm not going to touch too much on the goaltending. I mean, Frederik Andersen has the track record for me to at least be a little bit optimistic in that player. Having Jack Campbell for a full season will be helpful. I don't know, just goaltending really just is voodoo. And I mean, if the Maple Leafs get good goaltending, they're going to be a good team. If they get bad goaltending, you can't overcome bad goaltending no matter how much better defensively you are from one year to the next. And I know I've probably said all of this in other videos here and there, but I thought it would be important to throw it into one video on its own. But make sure to let me know what your thoughts and opinions are in the comment section below, and make sure to leave me a like on the video if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, remember, at this point in the offseason, hockey talk is hockey talk.